So I just recorded this once, and for some reason it didn't take, so I'm going to try making it shorter. This chapter is about the inequality of how my stepmother treated us compared to her kids. The fact that me and my sisters were overpunished and her children were pretty much coddled. My stepbrother was the only one that was ever brought to account, but that was because he was incredibly violent and would go off in rages. My stepmother would have me help her tie them to this support hoist. Basically, it was a tree without bark that held up the ceiling in order to try to control him. Her kids were allowed to stay in contact with their dad and with their grandparents on that side of the family, and we weren't. We were completely cut off from our mother and from her parents, our grandparents. But in the process of that, my stepbrother and sister's dad committed suicide. And it had a real backlash on my stepbrother, which I believe was the root to a lot of his violent behavior. But in the meantime, that was pretty much it. I mean, my sisters and I took the brunt of everything. We did all the housework. My sisters started picking up where I left off once I started things like, drill team and pep club and different violin recitals and performances and what have you. Once, things got, that was like through junior high school. But I remember, in the summer times, outside in the yard weeding, whether I'm weeding the flower garden or weeding the garden itself, or I was pulling tumbleweeds off the hillside and just watching the other kids play. There were times that I was able to, like, there wasn't anything to do, and I got to go outside and play. I'm not going to say I never did. It was more just the fact that nobody else had to work, that really started to make it sting. But my neighbors had horses, and I got to ride their horses all over the freaking mountainside. I mean, for miles. And we would just roam, me and whatever horse I was riding. They had two. But they never rode their horses, so I would exercise their horses for them, and that was a freedom that I had not experienced before and have not experienced since, that I really have a craving for, to just get on the back of a horse and just go. No fences, no limits, just run, just ride. Yeah. I don't remember any of my sisters ever being taken to the emergency room. I remember her kids being taken to the emergency room, and I could swear I can remember at least one of my sisters saying that there was a time, at least once, they should have been taken because they were bleeding quite profusely from somewhere. But, yeah, or the fact that she would grow her daughter's hair that didn't really grow, but she always cut ours. We always looked like little boys in dresses at church. In fact, we were even asked before if we were little boys. I basically looked like somebody put a bowl on our head and just cut around it. She would make her kids clothes, jeans and what have you. She was pretty talented seamstress. She started teaching me how to sew, but what she was having me make for clothing and then expected me to wear it. I was in junior high school, and I was already what I considered to be kind of a nerd, because I was always wearing, hand-me-downs, or, we'd go to Goodwill or Kmart, but that's what we could afford. It wasn't that I was ungrateful, I just knew I wasn't really in style. So I wasn't about to wear what she had me make to school and make things even worse. And as a result, she refused to, help me learn how to sew anymore. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's some, so I just recorded this and I remembered a bunch of stuff, and now I'm not remembering it all. That's one thing that's kind of frustrating, is I sit here and I dump on these videos, and if it doesn't take, I can't remember what I said and what I didn't. But there is obvious inequality. That I know I grew up, I don't even try to speak for my sisters, but I know for myself, I grew up at the complex because of that. I felt unrooted because I wasn't connected to my mother or to my my grandparents in any way, whom I knew as a small child. I was just cut off from them, And, but her kids weren't, and that never made sense to me. And her kids were allowed to receive presents from that side of the family, their dad's side of the family, but we weren't allowed to receive gifts from our side of the family, my grandmother or my mother. That was all sent back or held on to. It never made any sense to me, and then because things didn't make sense to me, my stepmother, of course, was, reaching for things to get me in trouble with my dad as our relationship developed, because she started growing jealous. And so she'd throw shade and try to get me in trouble. And then, of course, I would have a logical explanation for whatever it was she was talking about. And then he would go back to her and go, I don't even know what it is you want me to punish her for. And next thing you know, there's a big screaming fight. And because my dad's defending me. And then the next interaction I have with my stepmother, and this has happened numerous times, where I was told, if this family ever splits up, it will be your fault. The first time I was told that, I was 10 years old. Now I look at it and say, wow, I was pretty fucking powerful. But at the time, that was a lot of responsibility to put on me, especially with all those kids. Yeah.